The East Yorkshire Regiment was a line infantry regiment of the British Army, first raised in 1685 as Sir William Clifton's regiment of Foot. It saw service for 3 centuries, before being amalgamated with the West Yorkshire Regiment to form the Prince of Wales's own Regiment of Yorkshire in 1958. Subsequently, the regiment amalgamated with the Green Howards and the Duke of Wellington's regiment to form the Yorkshire Regiment on 6 June 2006. History. Raised in 1685 in Nottingham by Sir William Clifton, 3rd Baronet, the regiment was originally, like many British infantry regiments, known by the name of its current colonel. It fought at the Battle of Blenheim in 1704 during the War of the Spanish Succession, the Jacobite Rising of 1719, and at the Battle of Cartagena de Indias in 1741 during the War of Jenkins. In 1751, when the numerical system of designation of regiments of foot was adopted, it became the 15th Regiment of Foot. The regiment went on to take part in the capture of Isle d'Aix in 1757 and the Battle of the Plains of Abraham in 1759 during the 7 Years' War. In 1782 the regiment became the 15th Regiment of Foot. It again fought in the West Indies during the Napoleonic Wars, taking part in the invasions of Martinique and Guadeloupe. The regiment spent most of the 19th century on garrison duty, both at home and throughout the Empire. The 1st Battalion was shipped to New Brunswick in 1862 at the time of the Trent Affair, when Britain and the United States came close to war. With the Childers reforms of 1881, it became the East Yorkshire Regiment, the county regiment of the East Riding of Yorkshire. The 2nd Battalion fought in the 2nd Anglo-Afghan War and the 2nd Boer War. First World War Regular Army. The 1st Battalion landed at St. Nazaire as part of the 18th Brigade in the 6th Division in September 1914 for service on the Western Front. The 2nd Battalion landed at Le Havre as part of the 83rd Brigade in the 28th Division in January 1915, also for service on the Western Front before moving to Salonika in October 1915 for service on the Macedonian Front. Territorial Force. The 1/4th Battalion landed at Boulogne-sur-Mer as part of the York and Durham Brigade in the Northumbrian Division in April 1915 for service on the Western Front. New armies. The 6th Battalion landed at Suvla Bay in Gallipoli as the Pioneer Battalion for the 11th Division in August 1915. The battalion was evacuated in January 1916 and then landed at Marseille in July 1916 for service on the Western Front. The 7th Battalion landed at Boulogne-sur-Mer as part of 50th Brigade in the 17th Division in July 1915, also for service on the Western Front. The 8th Battalion landed at Boulogne-sur-Mer as part of the 62nd Brigade in the 21st Division in September 1915, also for service on the Western Front. The 10th, 11th, 12th and 13th Battalions were raised in September 1914 from men volunteering in Hull. These units were additionally entitled 1st, 2nd, 3rd and 4th City of Hull Battalions. They landed in Egypt as part of the 92nd Brigade in the 31st Division in December 1915 and then moved to France in March 1916, also for service on the Western Front. Between the wars in 1935 the regiment was renamed the East Yorkshire Regiment, after its colonel-in-chief. Second World War. In the Second World War, 6 hostilities-only battalions were raised. The 1st Battalion was serving in British India on the outbreak of war in 1939 and did not see active service until 1942 when Imperial Japan entered the war. The battalion fought in the Burma campaign in many different British Indian Army brigades. The regiment fought in the Battle of France and was evacuated at Dunkirk. It took part in the invasion of Normandy, the liberation of Western Europe, the North African Campaign, the invasion of Sicily and the Burma Campaign. The 2nd Battalion served with the 8th Infantry Brigade, attached to the 3rd Infantry Division throughout the whole war. At the time, the 3rd Division was commanded by Major General Bernard Montgomery, who would later command the Anglo-Canadian 21st Army Group. The battalion and division were sent to France in late 1939 as part of the British Expeditionary Force and remained there until May 1940 when they fought in the Battle of France and were evacuated at Dunkirk. After Dunkirk, the battalion and division spent many years on home defense anticipating a German invasion of England. After late 1942, when the threat of invasion receded, they then started training for offensive operations and, in mid-1944, invaded Normandy, France. The 4th Battalion was a first-line territorial army unit serving in the 150th Infantry Brigade in the 50th Infantry Division and, like the 2nd Battalion, served in France 1940, were evacuated at Dunkirk to England and remained in the UK with the division until mid-1941 when it was sent to the Middle East. The 5th Battalion was formed in 1939 as a second-line territorial army duplicate of the 4th Battalion. It served with the 69th Infantry Brigade in the 50th Infantry Division. After the war, the regiment was in mandatory Palestine during the Zionist insurgency and then took part in the Malayan emergency in 1953–56 before returning to Germany as part of the British Army of the Rhine. In 1958, it was amalgamated with the West Yorkshire Regiment to form the Prince of Wales's own Regiment of Yorkshire. Battle Honours. The regiment's battle honours were as follows: Blenheim, Ramillies, Oudenarde, Malplaquet, Louisbourg, Quebec 1759, Martinique 1762, Havana, St. Lucia 1778, Martinique 1794-1809, Guadeloupe 1810, Afghanistan 1879–80, South Africa 1900–02. The Great War. Ain 1914-18, Armentières 1914, Ypres 1915-17, Gravenstaffel Street, Julian Frezenberg, Bellewaerde, Hooge 1915, Luz, Somme 1916-18, Albert 1916-18, Basington, Delville Wood, Pozières, Flers Corslet, Morville, Thiepval, Ancre Heights, Ancre 1916, Arras 1917-18, Scarpa 1917-18, Arluse, Oppy, Messines 1917-18, Pilcombe, Longyemark 1917, Menin Road, Polygon Wood, Broadside, Poel Capel, Passchendaele, Cambrai 1917-18, Street, Quinton, Bapaume 1918, Rosiers, Lis Esters, Hazebrouck, Kemmel, Scherpenberg, Amiens, Hindenburg Line, EPE Acute HY, Canal du Nord, Street, Quinton Canal, Celle, Samba, France and Flanders 1914-18, Strumer, Doran 1917, Macedonia 1915-18, Souvla, landing at Souvla, Scimitar Hill, Gallipoli 1915, Egypt 1915–16. The Second World War. Withdrawal to Escaut, defense of Escaut, defense of Arras, French frontier 1940, Ypres Camins Canal, Dunkirk 1940, Normandy landing, Tilly-sur-Seulles, Odin, Conberg, Ebis Ridge, Drawn, Montpincon Street, Pierre-le-Viel, Gille, Naderain, Arm, Venrage, Rhineland, Schadenhof, Brinkum, Bremen, Northwest Europe 1940, 44–45. 1945, Gazla, Mersa Matruh, Defense of Alamein Line, El Alamein, Meret Wadi Zigzag Karat, North Africa 1942-43, Primusol Bridge, Sicily 1943, Sitang 1945, Burma 1945. Victoria Cross recipients. The following members of the regiment were awarded the Victoria Cross: Private George William Chafer, Great War; Private John Cunningham, Great War; Second Lieutenant John Harrison, Great War; Sergeant Harold Jackson, Great War; Private Eric Anderson, Second World War. Colonels of the regiment. Colonels of the regiment included 1685 to 1686, Col. Sir William Clifton, 3rd Baronet, 1686 to 1687, Col. Arthur Herbert, 1st Earl of Torrington, 1687 to 1688, Col. Hon. Sackville Tufton, 1688 to 1695, Col. Sir James Leslie, 1695 to 1709, Lt. Gen. Hon. Emmanuel Scrope Howe, 1709 to 1715, Gen. Algernon Seymour, 7th Duke of Somerset and Earl of Hertford, 1715 to 1749, Lt. Gen. Henry Harrison, 1749 to 1756, Col. John Jordan. The 15th Regiment of Foot, 1756 to 1768, FM Sir Geoffrey Amherst, 1st Baron Amherst, K.B., 1768 to 1775, Lt. Gen. Sir Charles Hutham Thompson, 8th Baronet, K.B., 1775 to 1778, Lt. Gen. Richard Lombard, 6th Earl of Cavan, 1778 to 1792, Gen. Sir William Fawcett, K.B., the 15th Regiment, 1792 to 1794, Gen. James Inglis Hamilton, 1794 to 1814, Gen. Henry Watson Powell, 1814 to 1846, Gen. Sir Maud Disney, KCB, 1846 to 1850, Gen. Sir Phineas Ryle, KCH, 1850 to 1851, Marge, Gen. Sir Henry Watson, CB, 1851 to 1861, Gen. Sir Howard Douglas, 3rd Baronet, GCB, GCMG, 1861 to 1868, Lt. Gen. William Booth, 1868 to 1877, Gen. Thomas Armstrong Drought, 1877 to 1888, Gen. Sir William Montague Scott McMurdo, GCB, the East Yorkshire Regiment, 1888 to 1889, Gen. Edward George Wynyard, 1889 to 1890, Gen. John Hope Wingfield, 1890 to 1891, Gen. Robert Bruce, 1891 to 1897, Gen. Edward Westby Donovan, 1897 to 1901, Lt. Gen. William Hardy, CB, 1901 to 1920, Marge, Gen. Sir Coleridge Grove, KCB, 1920 to 1925, Marge, Gen. Francis Seymour Inglefield, CB, DSO, 1925 to 1930, Marge, Gen. Sir Gerald Farrell Boyd, KCB, CMG, DSO, DCM, 1930 to 1933, Brig Gen. Henry Haggard, 1933 to 1940, Brig Gen. John Lewis Justice Clark, CMG, 1940 to 1948, Lt. Gen. Sir Desmond Francis Anderson, KBE, CB, CMG, DSO, 1948 to 1958, Brig. Robert John Springhall, CB, OBE,